Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
When Rob told me that we were going to have Dave Warner on the program, I went, oh, really? And he goes, no, not that one. We've got the absolute Australian superstar musician. Dave Warner, good morning and welcome to Two Blokes Chatting.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Neil. And yeah, nice to be on there.
Nice to be anywhere at our age, isn't it?
It's so true.
So we probably should address a little bit about the whole music career and then find out a little bit about what you're doing now. I quite like the name of your band that my mother actually introduced me to, Puss, in 1973. A quality name, quality band.
Yeah, well, it was possibly Australia's first punk band, I think, based out in Perth, and we played for on and off for a couple of years while I was finishing off uni there, and we were doing a couple of the songs that we later did with the Suburbs. So we were doing Hot Crutch and Suburban Boy, Throbbing Knob, one that we didn't do a lot.
Oh, stop it.
and these were all sort of family-focused songs, I assume, were they? You know, that
very much.
The gospel genre.
Now, Dave, honestly tell me, because I respect all forms of music, but punk rock was one I never quite got. Did you create that music because you really liked it, or you just wanted to be different to everybody else?
Yeah, no, I don't think we were punk rock, and because we preceded the Johnny Rotten kind of punk rock. I mean, I was influenced by people like Frank Zappa and the Fugs and Lou Reed, and so they had a kind of anti-music establishment angle, I think, to their music, and so they were my influences. And by the time that punk rock, as most people think of punk rock, the Sex Pistols and those bands came along, we'd left that behind and gone into, the Suburbs, which was, I was trying to develop something that was particularly Australian and, well, particularly about my background, actually, something that was really totally original. And I thought, look, you've got to write about where you're from, and even though it's really boring and mundane, laminate tables and going to the footy, that's my life. And so...
So you lived the lyrics, did you, Dave, of the Suburban Boy?
Yeah, exactly, I did. And... we didn't have any excitement, especially in Perth, but it wouldn't have been that much different in Melbourne and Geelong, I'm sure.
Oh, we had electricity.
It certainly wasn't any different in Wordy Bullock, where I was from, I can assure you, Dave. I resonate well with those words.
So, Dave, what is the suburb that we are talking about here? So that we can absolutely bag it senseless, which suburb were you living in when Suburban Boy was written?
Oh, I grew up in Bicton, which is a southern Perth suburb near Fremantle,
yep,
in the southern reaches of the Swan River. So, and it's now become a very popular suburb. A lot of the Fremantle dockers and people like that live in Bicton, but in those days it was, quite bushy, and we overlooked the river and had a lot of fun times around the river. But that's my neck of the woods.
So you'd have a statue in the main street of Bicton, would you, until Matthew Pavlich knocks you sideways?
Well, look, I wish, but they haven't done one yet. But I think it has been suggested by me.
I'll tell you what, Dave, by the time we get through this interview and give your full career out, you'll be in line for one. Don't worry about that. Now, listen, it's a really tough time for people of your ilk at the moment with this coronavirus. No live gigs going on. We've heard a lot about how tough things are going. But let's wind the clock back. When you were trying to establish yourself back in the 70s and trying to find your own niche, how tough was it back then?
Well, it was tough if you were playing original material. I'm speaking primarily of Perth, and that was a cover band city, and no one did original material in Perth. Like some bands might do one song, and we went out with the idea of doing 5 or 6 nights a week playing all your own material. So that was hard, and I knocked on the doors of pretty much every pub in the city, and we got into a few places and gradually established it, and fortunately, people liked it. My vision worked, and people wanted to hear their lives reflected back in song and music, and it very quickly became very popular. And once that happened, then it wasn't that hard at all. In fact, it was just a fabulous time, and I'm sure any of your listeners who remember those halcyon days of the 70s and early 80s with Skyhooks and Chisel and Angels and any Midnight Oil, walk down the local pub and there'd be a great band, and you could you hear it for about $5 at the most.
Well, I grew up in Melbourne, and when I say grew up, I had my childhood. I haven't grown up yet, but I had within half an hour's drive of my home some of the great Melbourne pubs. The Croxton Park Hotel, where you would rock at the Croc. You had the Donny Inn. You had Southside Six. You had all these pubs around Melbourne, and what would happen is, and I can remember bands like some of the Captain Matchbox and Rocksteady and these bands that used to just be there all the time. But then you get a band come down from Sydney. There was a band that did a stint in Victoria, late 1970s, early 80s, called Metal as Anything, and another one called In Excess, and you could pretty much follow them around for the week that they were in Melbourne. If you liked Mental as Anything, for example, you'd go to the Southside Six one night, and then you'd go to the Donny Inn the next night, and then you'd rock at the Croc the next night, and you'd just see the same show because it just happened all the time. It was amazing in those days.
It was fantastic, and you got, as you say, it wasn't uncommon to have loyal fans who'd come and see you, 3 times in a week or 4 times in a week. And when we were starting in Perth, I realised one of the problems was going to be that if we wanted in a small place like that to attract people, we might be all right for one night, but we had to keep entertaining them. So we had something like 65, 68 songs on the playlist when we started, so that we could always have a large number of different songs and wouldn't bore the pants off people.
Dave, what intrigued me about those days too was the pay. And when you've got a band like yours, you're writing all the music, you're the lead singer, you're doing a fair bit of the work, and there's this lazy bloke who just plays the bass, and someone's working pretty hard on the drums. But at the end of the night, the publican gives you big wad of notes. Was it just divvied up evenly, and was it good money?
Well, in the end, it was very good money. We and one or two other bands, a band called Loaded Dice that played in Melbourne. We actually out of Perth did a great deal whereby originally you was paid a pretty small amount, a retainer by the pubs. It would be about $150 between all of you. And then I instituted a cover charge, and the pubs there said, "Oh, look, no one will ever pay a cover charge," but they did, and it was just $1 or $2. But what we did was we managed to, we told the pubs, well, you're still going to have to pay us the retainer as well as the cover charge. So we had a deal whereby we got money from the pub and we got all the gate as well, which was pretty unprecedented in Australia. So financially it was good. We divvied up the money evenly. Until the point we divvied up the money evenly, we had a manager and he left after a while, and I took over the management, and I got half of what the manager's fees was in addition, but otherwise it was all split. It was, and travelling from Perth also, you had to put a lot of money aside because in those days airfares were pretty expensive, and if you were going to tour east, it was expensive to accommodate yourself and to fly.
So with we fast forward a bit because obviously that didn't last forever, and we're going to play a song in a moment by a lady called Nicole Warner, who we believe you know, and we're going to have a chat to her after the song if that's all right. But fast forward a bit, you've written books, you've won Premier's Awards or the equivalent thereof for your writing. You've obviously enjoyed either having a pen in your hand or a keyboard or whatever it is that you write on. Tell us a bit about that part of your career.
Yeah, look, I always loved writing. I always wanted to write books, even when I was playing in the band. But, there's not much time for anything else when you're rehearsing and on the road and playing. In fact, there's not even a lot of times to write songs when you were touring to the extent that we were, 6 or 7 weeks on the road and up and down the Hume Highway. But I've always loved that. And after I decided to stop playing full-time in music, although I continued to do it, and then started to write things like plays, and then from there into books. And I've done non-fiction books, and I've done novels, mainly crime novels, and they've been good enough to win a couple of awards. And more recently, as you mentioned, well, actually over a period of about 20 years, I've been writing songs for Nicole, my wife, who's also a really good singer. And I had meant to record these at various times, but never had enough money, or, I was heading off somewhere, and we finally recorded the album that we've been meaning to a few months ago, and we had the sellout launch and everything going, and then the coronavirus knocked us on the head.
Yeah.
The album's out, but we haven't done any touring to support it. We did 2 gigs, I think, and they were sellouts. But apart from that, we haven't had much chance to get it across to people.
So is it fair to say that we waited forever and a day for the album? Would that be fair to say?
It definitely, yeah, it's over. I think Martin Cillier, the guitarist, and I, who actually had been playing with Mental as anything up until Greedy's very untimely and sad death last year. We wrote those songs for Nicole, and I think Forever and a Day would be back in the early 90s when we wrote that one.
Dave, I love a good crime story turned into a movie in particular, but I'm enjoying reading John Grisham's stuff in particular over the journey. Now, you've written lyrics because you've lived them. When you create your stories, are they all imaginary in the mind, or do you see things in real life that you adapt into your stories?
Or did you rob 3 banks and thought this will make a good story?
Well, look, it is a little bit of all of those things. The first few that I did, I tried to focus on what worked for me in music, and what worked for me was talking about my own life, and as we said, simple things like, the footy and stuff. So I created characters that I really could identify with, that were 70% or 40% Dave Warner, depending. The next book that I've got out, actually, which was due out in July, but because of the virus has been put back to October, that's slightly different. That's set in New York, and it is much more a work of
creativity.
Fiction. Yeah. Complete fiction. But otherwise, I do like to, retain a bit of myself in there, and I think most authors do. It's one of you can get an angle on life, you can put your emotions across on the page, and hopefully it works.
One of the great things about setting the book in New York, and I assume the next one's going to be set in London, so that any time you go to America or the UK, it's a tax deduction because you're doing it for research purposes.
Absolutely.
That is good stuff. Now, this might seem flippant, but it is serious. I do love nothing more than read a book and then see it turned into a movie. Have you got any contacts through your life in Australia to suggest that there may be a screenplay?
Yes. At various times, some of my books have been under option, and like getting something into actually, after it's under option, to actually become a movie is really tough in a place like Australia, or a TV series. But there is a series of my books, the ones that involve Dan Clement up in Broome and Snowy Lane in Perth. There's an option on those, and by somebody who has the ability to put it, I can't say who, but has the ability to put that on the screen. So I'm hoping it happens.
Good stuff.
Soon.
Absolutely. Well, before we play Nicole's song, I have to ask this question, and you've only probably been asked this question 900 million times. How annoying is it when someone comes up and goes, "You don't look like you could open the batting for Australia"? I mean, of all, even the fact that he calls himself Dave, as distinct from David, or how does that play out when someone comes along who's got your name and suddenly becomes one of the biggest names in the international sport?
Well, look, it was a bit disruptive at first, but the fact is that when I was a youngster, I was quite a pugnacious left-hand opening batsman.
Oh, really?
I just take it as being due credit that they've somehow found about my schoolboy performance.
And they've handed out the green cap. Yeah, although, no, I was going to say something. We're on the radio, so I won't. You seem like a really nice bloke, though. I'm going to say that. We are going to, it's 23 minutes past and 24 minutes past 9 o'clock here in the city of Geelong, and I assume up in Sydney where you are, it is as well. So we are going to mute our microphones and play a song called Junkies, Drunks and Robbers, which I'm assuming, given that Nicole spends time with you, I assume is not based on real life. But we will play that song, and then when we come back, if she'd like to have a chat to us, we'd like to have a chat to her. How's that sound?
Terrific.
24 minutes past 9 o'clock on 94.7 The Pulse. We should say thanks to Dave because we probably won't get to hear from you. What a great conversation. And next time I'm in Sydney, I'm coming and having a beer with you.
I just love he slipped the word pugnacious in there.
Yeah,
that's a
nice.
Great word.
Yeah, it is a good
you
one.
You can tell he's an author.
Yeah. And you can tell we're not, but that's okay. We will go now to a song called Junkies, Drunks and Robbers by Nicole Warner, and we'll come back and have a chat to Nicole. Thanks, Dave. We'll talk again.
Good on you, mate.
Thank you.
I woke up one morning to find my man had gone. The best years of my life deserve no note, and I nearly couldn't function, but I made it to the junction with a heavy heart and suitcase tied with rope. but I'd heard in desperation folks headed for the coke sign and the smoke. And eventually I found it, and the wretched that abounded, like the one who talked to no one when she spoke. She said, junkies, drunks and robbers and faceless one-night lovers, maybe all that you discover this way. But I'd rather have as brothers those junkies, drunks and robbers than a cheating man whose sweet words make you stay. So I found the fabled cross with its lights of fairy floss. I ate my fill and went on every ride, till finally I succumbed to the thrill of being numb and became one of those whom I despised. What respect I had I squandered, in a hazy daze I wandered. My shoeless feet were caught and blue with cold. But in the blackest moments I recalled those words of torment, and somehow they filled me with a steel resolve. Junkies, drunks and robbers and faceless one-night lovers, maybe all that you discover this way. But I'd rather have as brothers those junkies, drunks and robbers than a cheating man whose sweet words make you stay. And then one day I saw the man who years before had set me on this path where I had strayed. He didn't recognize the heart that cried and died. He shielded his new love and looked away. And Your Honor, at that instant I acted with an instinct. I killed him with a string of Cupid's bow. And I really must confess that I have no regrets, but I'll tell you one sure thing before I go. Junkies, drunks and robbers and faceless one-night lovers, maybe all that you discover this way. But I'd rather have as brothers those junkies, drunks and robbers than a cheating man whose sweet words make you stay. Yes, I'd rather have as brothers those junkies, drunks and robbers than a cheating man whose sweet words make you stay.
Junkies, Drunks and Robbers on the Two Blokes Chatting radio show, and that is a song by a person called Nicole Warner. If I click my fingers and close my eyes, I reckon we might have Nicole Warner on the telephone. Hello, Nicole.
Hello there, boys. That was very, very nice.
That worked just like the technology was meant to, unlike the start of this program, but that's another story. This is Neil, the other one's Rob. Thanks for joining us this morning. We've sort of a bit like the Warner family hour here. Tell us about Forever and a Day and making an album. It took a long time to come through.
It took a very long time. Well, I've always loved singing, guys, and hanging with Martin and Dave for many, many years. We would go into Martin's studio and they'd say, why don't you try this one, Nick? So we'd do lots and lots of music over the years. But then, of course, Dave decided it was time for us to have children. So, yes.
Dave decided to have... But he's just a suburban boy. He knows what it's like to be rejected every night.
No, he doesn't get rejected anymore. He wanted a suburban family, so that's what we did. But yes, our eldest is 24 and it goes down to a 13-year-old lad, so and lots of rescued animals. So that is why we had such a large break. And then finally Dave said, come on, we're going to do this. So that's how Forever and a Day came about, and it's aptly titled, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Now, Nick, intrigues me that a lady who was attracted to a man who preceded Johnny Rotten in the music world and singing country music. How did you get on in life with what appears to be quite a diverse opinion on what good music is?
Dave's a highly, highly intelligent guy. I'm a Gemini, so I need someone who's keeps my brain active, and he's the man. But yeah, we have very different taste in music. Oh, sometimes we go, yeah, like we both like the Bee Gees, but I liked a lot of pop music. I grew up with loving Madonna and Whitney Houston and stuff, so Dave would sort of groan a bit. We both love ABBA, and we both love country music, so we have diverse taste, and then sometimes it blends in. But he's a beautiful, beautiful songwriter, and I love the music he's written to me, and I'm very lucky because as I've gotten older, I can't sort of get the falsetto, and my voice is becoming more sort of bluesy from years of no sleep, and raising children and getting up with senior dogs and whatnot. So I'm lucky, and he and Martin are a great combo. So I'm really lucky to have an album where there's, I think, there's a diverse mixture of songs, and I've had people say that they love every song. So how lucky am I to have a first album where I've had a really good response to it.
And we're looking at the album here we've got on the desk in front, and thank you for sending that down to us. That was very kind.
Pleasure.
We'll make sure that it gets put into the library here so that lots of other shows can play it as well. I noticed that on the front it is titled Forever and a Day, and it's by Nicole. There's no Warner on the end of that. Is that you are marketing yourself as Nicole?
Well, I think, the way I think Dave and Martin, they sort of directed me with that. So I think just to keep it simple, word it as Nicole, but then as people research and realise, I suppose, not to sort of be riding on Dave's coattails, I suppose. I'm trying to, be myself. I always modelled for a lot of my time, so... my background is different. I sang in a girl band many, many years ago called Pleasure Principle that Dave managed, so we're a bit like Bananarama at the height of the America's Cup. So, and I've always done backing vocals for Dave. So I think just to keep it simple, and I think also aesthetically, probably if I put in a big Warner across it, they possibly couldn't have fit my head on the front of it, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, with a head like yours, I'd be keeping the word off it as well, because Rob sang in an all-girl band at one stage too, back in the days when he was Roberta, and we don't like his face on albums. We put his name across it.
No, they kept me off. Now, let's get back to focus. Nicole, what stage did you join Dave's life, and were you straight into the band as a roadie? You mentioned that you were doing some backing vocals as well. Were you very much part of that on-the-road rock music era?
Oh, look, I'm very, very privileged. So when Johnny Leopard was alive, we did Queensland with Greg McCainch from Skyhooks, a songwriter and bass player. So I met Dave a long time ago, 1985, but initially we were just professional because we didn't sort of enter into anything like that. But, I sang, and he auditioned me and the other girls and stuff. So we started off professionally, and then obviously we went on to falling in love and doing other things. But initially Dave had some other girls doing backing vocals for the Suburbs then. I think from about 1987 I probably started in as, one of the Suburbs.
And enjoyed the lifestyle?
Absolutely. A lot of fun. Luckily, we've all got good energy and sense of humour, but I love everyone in Dave's band, and I consider them lifelong friends. Beautiful Tony Durant, Dave's guitarist, that's known Dave longer than what I have, so he's really good fun. And there's been Martin, and as I say, Greg at certain times he would play. So I've met the most amazing creative people. So it's been a wild journey, but we've managed to do it.
And you mentioned the hint of gravel in your voice, which came from those late nights with the band. Did you have the energy to keep up with the boys?
Absolutely. It's more like, did they have the energy to keep up with me half the time? They're all older than me by a minimum of 10 or 15 years, so I'm like the youthful one in the band. So that was the easy part. And to answer your question, no, I'm anti-drugs with that lovely song Junkies, Drunks and Robbers. The only drugs I've ever done is in Labour, but I do like red wine, so there you go. Everyone has a vice, don't they?
That's good. I did a live program last night for 4 hours and got through a bottle of Shiraz, so...
You're my kind of guy.
Yeah, we don't... We obviously recommend drinking in moderation. It was just that it was a fairly long program doing it from home. Hey, Nicole, where to from here?
Well, hopefully, as Dave mentioned, my single launch was amazing. So much love and enthusiasm and support, and then I was meant to have my album launch, and that was a sellout with a huge wait list. That was meant to be at the Fig in Manly. So I'm an optimistic person, guys, so I'm hoping before the end of the year I will have my album launch. I've got about 5 boxes of CDs I've got to move. Dave's got his Mugs Game album, so our lounge room, everyone comes in, we have to say, oh, excuse the boxes in the background. They're all hidden behind the couch, but we've got to move a lot of music, but I'm very grateful for what has happened, and look, you've got to think that COVID's going to F off and things will get back to normal, hopefully.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? Well, if you get down to Victoria, and you obviously want to come to Geelong if you're going to go anywhere in Victoria. It is, of course,
Sure
the beautiful
do.
city by the bay. You make sure you let us know, and we would be happy to buy the Warners a glass of red wine and talk to them in the studio at some stage when they're down here.
Well, that's a beautiful offer. And again, if you come up, we're on the northern beaches near Manly, and I can whip up something in the kitchen or crack a beer or a red for you guys.
Sounds like a plan. I actually lived in Mossman for 12 months about 3 years ago, not far away at all.
Gosh, no, that's only a stone's throw from us. How'd you find Mossman?
Oh, you just turn right when you get to the Falcon Street exit. Sorry, you walked into that. Had this crummy view overlooking the harbour. It was a long story. That one we might do over a red wine at some stage.
I was wondering how your neighbours would embrace you, but yes.
Warmly. I just about knocked Sonia Kruger off her feet the first time I got out of my car, and I mean that in the physical sense, as distinct from her falling in love with me. I got out of the car and there she was. I thought, that's a bit weird. Never mind. Hey, Nicole, we've got to go, but it has been great talking to both you and Dave today. Thanks for taking half an hour out of your Saturday morning to chat to two hacks down in Geelong. We've enjoyed it immensely, and all the very best with both the single and the album.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Oh,
Good on you.
Dave's doing backing vocals for the conversation.
That's magnificent.
Thanks, guys. All the very, very best.
Thank you.
See ya.
You too. Bye.
So there, Nicole and Dave Warner. What a family.